Alrighty, what is going on, Pats Nation? You guys already know who it is. Patriots Global back here with another video with a special guest, even though at this point y'all have seen him several times on the channel. But it has been a while. It has been a while since we were able to get Patriots Football. Yeah,
I've been on YouTube in a minute, man. I've been getting slack last.
Trust me, as a content creator, I totally get that. But nonetheless, we're back. We're back. His special guest. I was able to get Patriots Football Breakdown kind of on the channel here last minute. So we had a little bit of a delay here because I wanted to kind of talk to him about some stuff, kind of how we were going to wrap this up. A little bit of technical difficulties in there too. Of course, what else is new? But in today's live stream, I was going to say video, but today's live stream, we're going to be answering your guys' questions. But what we're really going to be doing is we're going to be recapping the first 2 days of free agency. Really, 1 day of free agency, and then the other day was the legal tampering period. But we're going to kind of recap both of those days. We're going to talk about, our expectations with this team going forward, kind of our reactions to the moves that have happened. We've seen more trades than actual signings, really. By this team, we'll talk about the re-signings that they've made. But I kind of want to start here. I made a video on this, so you guys kind of know my reaction already, but I still can't wrap my head around this. Shaq Mason, you deal him to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Out of all teams, you ship him off to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, Tom Brady retires for what? 2 months?
Rick rolls the entire world. Like, I'm back.
Yeah.
Y'all thought I was gone. I'm like, no. It's like that Ric Flair video. Like, I will never retire.
Yeah. And then he's back. He's back. Of course, Tom Brady.
I had a feeling, man. I really had a feeling. I didn't think he was retired.
I don't know why he retired.
Yeah, I thought it was like at best 50-50. I didn't think he was truly serious.
I thought,
Shaq, man, I don't like it. I mean, I like, it's good to create cap space and things like that. But I mean, think about what's the strength of our team, right? It's the offensive line. Trent Brown is still technically unsigned. He's a free agent. I think we have a chance to bring him back. Good chance. But guards are typically replaceable. I mean, probably more replaceable than tackles. But Shaq has just been such a good player for such a long time. I mean, I guess it was like a risk reward thing or a diminishing returns, I guess you could say, type of thing. Bill felt like it was time to move on, maybe a year too early versus a year too late, like that saying that we always hear. It's unfortunate, but it's one of those things that happens every year. Hopefully we have a good replacement plan because he was probably our best offensive lineman of the last 5 years or so on a most consistent basis, at least I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Shaq Mason, easily the Patriots' best offensive lineman, the Patriots' most consistent lineman. And you kind of look at this and it makes no sense from top to bottom. You look at the compensation, you look at moving on from him. The best way I think we can look at this is, like you said, get rid of him a year too early than a year too late. That's probably the only valuable reason we can talk about. And unfortunately, that's not something we're going to figure out right now. That's something
he was a 5th round pick from Georgia Tech. We got a 5th round pick for him. Like I say, you can find guards. I mean, I think guard is traditionally one of those positions that's kind of, I don't want to say like not important, but you can find a lot of those type of guys. And, like I said, it sucks to lose a quality player like that, especially when that's kind of the core of our team, or at least it was last year. But, we got to be, if you're going to trade a guy like that, you got to be able to replace him.
Agreed. First donation here of today's chat. I want to thank Tommy here. Optimax, I believe I'm saying that right. Let me know if I'm not, but I believe I am saying that right. But $5 donation, first donator of today's stream. Really appreciate you for giving back to the channel, donating, supporting us. So much love to you. You said, I really hope Mack learns how to run for his life during the offseason. No protection, and now Von Miller twice. So we are going to talk about Von Miller later on in this live streaming. Patriots Football Breakdown actually talked about it a little bit before we started. So I definitely want to touch about Von Miller. That does impact the Patriots, but we will talk about that a little bit later after we talk about, kind of everything going on right now with the Patriots. But, you kind of are mixing what we're saying in with the offensive line. And I think that's kind of everybody's big worry, is that the Patriots didn't have a lot of cap space, right? The Patriots don't have a lot of draft capital compared to recent years that we've seen. When you look at the team's needs that we essentially predicted them to have going into this offseason, cornerback for sure, probably tackle in some type of capacity, whether you're bringing back Trent Brown or the draft or whatnot. and then you're hoping to add a wide receiver. You can probably put linebacker in there also somewhere in that mix. But
Yeah.
you didn't have really like offensive line as a whole becoming a big issue. Like I said,
Yeah, I mean
you're
that was your
probably
strength. That was arguably your
yeah,
big when they were winning last year, when they were on that win streak, the best piece of that team was the offensive line. And it was that was the case the year before too, even with Cam. It was all about the offensive line. If you start letting that deteriorate, I'm not sure you really be a serious competitive team. Like you got to have an identity. The identity the last 2 years has been the O-line. They've revolved around that. They've revolved the entire offense around that. The running game, everything. Can't let that slide. I mean, not without proving that you have something else to fall back on.
yeah. And this whole Shaq Mason thing, it screwed the Patriots. Look, and I don't want to jump on it too soon and say, hey, we're screwed. This team is going on a downhill slope at this point. It's hard to be optimistic about trading Shaq Mason, but kind of the theme that I've realized so far with the Patriots, guys. I first off want to say we're into our first real day of free agency. This is the first actual day of free agency. The legal tampering period isn't actually a day of free agency. It's just the legal tampering period. You just hear a lot of stuff going on that
They can
day.
agree to deals, but they can't actually sign them yet. They can
Yeah,
sign them today.
a lot of stuff is still happening. Like this is still very, very fresh. Free agency, very, very fresh. You still have trades happening, free agency happening, the draft.
Look
is
at
still
Randy
happening. Like,
Gregory, man. I mean, he flip-flopped like twice, man. He was just,
yeah,
I'm going to go back to Dallas. Now I'm going to Denver. Now I'm going back to Dallas. Now I'm going back to Denver, man. I mean, it's not until
exactly.
you got the ink on the paper, you really don't know.
It's very, very, very fresh right now. So let's not freak out too much. But what's upset me most so far about the last couple of days with the Patriots this offseason is that when you reach the offseason, you reach free agency, yes, you're going to have guys that leave. JC Jackson in this case. Also, Ted Karras leaves in this case. Guys are going to leave. It sucks. You're going to have holes. Guys leave. It happens, especially when you don't have a lot of money. But the Patriots are creating more holes for themselves. And that's what is upsetting me. And I think that's what's upsetting Pats Nation so much is that this team is creating, right now at least, more holes for themselves than they did that within Shaq Mason. A very, very affordable guard. He performed extremely well last year, extremely well the year before. When you look at the best graded Patriots over the last several years, Shaq Mason has consistently been in those top 5 players. Again, your most consistent offensive lineman on your team right now. And now this entire offensive line has big question marks. You have Isaiah Wynn, who's taking up what, 13 to 15 million on that 5th-year option. If you wanted to save money, cut him. Well, I'm probably not going to cut him, but
Yeah, it's
trade
13 to
him,
15 too much.
extend him, something
I can go
with him.
find a
You want to
turnstile
free
at the
money.
airport for free.
Exactly. So you could have done something with him to free up money. You have David Andrews coming back. That's great. You let Ted Karras walk. You have Michael Onwenu coming back, which is great. Obviously, this offseason, you had to figure out a way that you're going to make him into your starting piece. I don't know where they're going to fit him in. I don't know if they want to put him at guard, if they want to put him at tackle. We're going to see what they decide that they want to do with him. And I think that what they do with him will be evident based off of what this team does with the rest of the offensive line, signings, trades, the draft. That will be evident on where Michael Onwenu is going to play in this upcoming season, likely
I
the
think
following years of his career.
ideally they'd like him at tackle, but you just lost both of your starting guards, Ted Karras, Shaq Mason. Like Onwenu came into the league as a guard, but he's pretty much played his best ball at left tackle, I think. Played some right tackle last year too, when Trent was out. But now, I mean, that's one guard spot, and that you no longer have that swing tackle that you're using Michael Onwenu as late in the year last year to really supplement the power running game, which was great, by the way. I mean, you can also use like a backup offensive lineman as an extra tight end. I mean, it's not that complicated of a thing to be an extra blocker, but he was really good at it. But that's only filling one of those spots. You still have an open starting guard position to fill. And if you don't re-sign Trent Brown, now were you looking at Justin Herron? I mean, we saw how that went last year. That was not good. It was not good at all. So they got to have a good, consistent plan set. Yeah, man, it hasn't been very delightful, but it, again, like you said at the top, it didn't really come unexpected though. We spent a lot of money last year. We knew we weren't going to have nearly as much this year. It's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles, man. I mean, that's the importance of drafting. You are only as good as your ability to draft. This draft has to be great. We have to start putting good drafts together. to get that salary cap number down to give us more room if we need to go out and fill like one hole, go out to get an elite receiver. Now you have the money to do that. If you're trying to fill all your holes in free agency, you can't stay afloat. It just doesn't work that way. It's not set up that way.
Yeah, and I mean, usually if you want like more immediate impacts, usually that's going to happen via free agency versus
Yeah.
you kind of trying to build that long stem stability with your team and kind of work on that bringing that cap number down. That's usually where you go to via the draft. The Patriots have a draft like last year. I'm confident. If they don't, then I think this team's going to be
Yeah.
absolutely screwed. But you look at the offensive line, and you went from having to really just add a tackle, maybe two, depending on what you wanted to do with the whole Isaiah Wynn situation. He's going to be a free agent at the end of next year. The Patriots kind of like to be afloat with those type of things, kind of be a year early on those. I think with the Shaq Mason trade also, it prevents you from being able to look into Isaiah Wynn a year early, at least at that extra tackle position, because now you're looking at having to add, you're either looking at having to add a tackle and a guard or two guards. Instead of looking at one position or having to fill in the offensive line, now you're looking at multiple you have to fill because of you trading Shaq Mason. And look, I think we all could have gotten behind it in some case. The Patriots are good at drafting the offensive line. And the thing is that finding good guards is a lot easier than finding good tackles. That's why tackles are more valuable.
O-line in general, I think it's just that's got plenty of great value in the back end of the draft. I mean, you have to be like to take an offensive tackle or anything like that in the top, even 10 really, you got to be like an elite level offensive tackle, like Hall of Fame, like a Anthony Munoz, Jonathan Ogden, elite all-time caliber player for that sort of thing. Penei Sewell, like most recently with the Lions, but there's not a lot of those guys coming along. You can find plenty of good depth, 4th, 5th, 6th round, I think, offensive lineman, because it's a position that converts so easily. I think from college to the NFL, it's not like you're learning a whole system. It's pretty much, block the guy in front of you. That's basically what it is.
Yeah. And I think we all could have gotten behind this a little bit more. Nonetheless, it sucks, especially going to Tom Brady and the rivals. Like, we all have our salty wound feelings about the Tampa Buccaneers, and this doesn't help it. But I think the biggest thing that really gets under our skin is the fact that it was a 5th round pick. Shaq Mason is still only 28 years old. He is arguably the most affordable guard with his talent in the entire National Football League. Not to mention the fact that he's a top 5 guard in the NFL. So you mix all of these things together and you're like, we got a 5th round pick. We got more for a retired Rob Gronkowski than we did for one of the best guards in the National Football League who is signed for multiple years, not even 30. We got a 4th round pick and a 6th round pick for Rob Gronkowski, and you're telling me for Shaq Mason we could only get a 5th? I don't buy it.
Yeah, it's a tough one to swallow, man. It really is. And like you said, especially of all teams, right? It just had to be that one team in the TB that we don't particularly like up here right now. But hey, wish him luck, man. Whatever, do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, nothing but love for Shaq Mason. This isn't his fault in any way, shape, or form.
No.
I just don't understand from a front office perspective how for Shaq Mason you're only getting a 5th round pick. I mean, you could have easily gotten a 3rd round pick, right? At the extreme least, I would think a 4th round pick. The fact that we're only getting a 5th round pick, it just makes absolutely no sense to me, because there were also multiple teams interested in Shaq Mason. It's not just the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that were interested. Multiple teams were contacting the Patriots about Shaq Mason, and still only got a 5th round pick. I just don't understand that.
I think part of the problem is when you traded him, because it's like supply and demand, right? Like what's going on right now? Well, it's free agency. Everybody's going out and hitting the market. I can go sign a guard. Why would I give up a draft pick to trade for a guard? I mean, that's a team. That's like if you're, cap strapped and you don't have really any other choice. It depends in situations like that who has the leverage. You're not always getting back, fair or quality value or equal value for a player. It just depends on who has the ball in their court. And, right now it's a bad time to try and trade a player, I think, especially with everybody who's able to just go out in free agency and address their needs. It's kind of like, why would I take on salary and also give up a draft pick when I could just sign somebody and I'm just giving up salary and keeping that draft pick? I don't know. I mean, it's the timing is kind of strange. I think hope you would have at least tried to wait until training camp. Maybe somebody gets an injury, somebody gets kind of decimated on the offensive line, the value goes up then because they need him more. I don't really understand it. I mean, maybe there's a bigger plan at work here, hopefully, but yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
Yeah. And I want to talk about Ted Karras here in a second, but I definitely want to get to this donation real quick by my boy McGoat. I had this comment up for a while. I just kind of want to finish the Shaq Mason discussion there. And not kind of hopping back and forth between that discussion about their Shaq. But Mick Goat with a $5 donation, second donator of today's chat. Nothing but love for you, Mick Goat. Big time supporter of the channel. You said, "What's up, dude? What is going on, my guy?" You said, "What do you think about Julio Jones?" Do you kind of want to take this off first? You know, what do you think about Julio Jones? Obviously, for those who don't know, he was cut by the Tennessee Titans. He's an immediate free agent. Any team that does sign Julio Jones, this will not go against comp picks. So any team can sign him right now without having to worry about giving up a comp pick.
I mean, if you're telling me he's going to be fully healthy all year long and, play to his maximum ability, he's clearly your best receiver. But is he going to be able to do that? He damn sure couldn't last year. He was barely on the field for Tennessee. It felt like I think he only played like maybe single-digit games for him. And really, in his last couple of years in Atlanta, he was starting to taper off a little bit. How much gas does he have in the tank? I mean, can he still be a semblance of that guy in Atlanta? We know he's obviously not the same player. You can't expect him to be. He's just a lot older now. But, can they find a way to use him the right way to get the most out of him? I think it's worth a shot. I'm probably in the minority on wide receiver. I don't think we're bad at wide receiver. I think we're fine. I mean, we're not great, but I mean, you got Kendrick Bourne, who really took off the second half of last year. I mean, he's got a lot of potential. If you keep Jakobi Meyers, that's an up and coming young player. Nelson Aguilar, I know he's been kind of polarizing. Some people don't like him. Some people do. He could be a little more consistent for us, but I really don't think receiver is that terrible. I mean, I don't think you need a 99 overall receiver to be able to win in the league. But hey, if you have a chance to add a player that could significantly help you, I mean, I'm always for that. Still alive?
To add and get better at that position versus a absolute need where you don't have anybody there. You have to add something in this offseason. You're absolutely screwed. So I think this kind of went from a point where the Patriots could have targeted some better wide receivers as a luxury need, but because they created more needs for themselves this offseason, obviously letting JC Jackson go, corner is a huge need now. You have so many more needs with limited draft capital, very limited money. I just don't think you're going to be able to go out there and add luxury picks in this specific case at wide receiver. I don't think it's out of the question. Like, it won't surprise me if they end up signing like Allen Robinson or something like that. But I think wide receiver is a luxury need and not this big, absolute current need that Patriots fans want to see. They want to see an addition there.
Yeah.
But we do not need to see an addition there.
I'd sign Devontae Adams in a second, but I mean, it's just not practical. I'm more worried about the defense, to be honest with you. I'm more worried about the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side right now. Just everybody that we lost in the secondary, the linebacking core just being so slow and old. I like the Mack Wilson deal because I mean, you essentially traded a player who wasn't playing, Chase Winovich, for a player that is going to play. And Mack Wilson obviously is one of those Alabama guys. We all love that. If there's one thing that Bill knows, he knows linebacker. So I trust this one. Haven't gotten a chance to really look at Mack Wilson too much yet, but I mean, obviously Bill sees something there. I trust his judgment on that. I think that's cool. I would like a pass rusher opposite Judon. I think he needs some help in that regard. I think he was facing too many double teams last year, and then we kind of go flat after that. Jadeveon Clowney's still out there. What would it cost to get him? I think he played pretty cheap last year, so I don't really know what it would take. Bobby Wagner probably be out of our price range, I would think. I don't know, but I would just to get some more speed on defense, a little more youth on defense, especially at the linebacker core. I thought that was such a problem last year. But yeah, I mean, I like the Mack Wilson trade right now. I'm not sure if Dante's coming back. Not sure if they're even going to try and bring him back. Maybe they just move on altogether, separate ways. But yeah, I'm pretty much worried about the defensive side of the ball right now more than the offensive side.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, honestly, before this whole offensive line fiasco, I was the same way. Now my focus is shifting more towards, not more towards the offense, but I have bigger issues with the offense. But as for Julio Jones, in my own personal opinion, I don't think it's going to have this big market. For me, it really depends on what would you have to give up. Not give up, but what would the contract look like here for Julio Jones? I mean, I bring up a question. Would you rather have Julio Jones at this point, or would you rather have had Jarvis Landry? And the Patriots didn't even look into Jarvis Landry. So
Yeah.
the question is, if they didn't even look into Jarvis Landry, are they really going to look into Julio Jones? And Julio Jones, in this case, he only started in 2 games for the Titans this past year. He played in a
Wow.
total of 10 games.
Wow.
10 games
I
total.
thought it was more than that, but wow. I mean, I knew he missed a lot of time. I didn't realize it was that much. Wow.
Yeah, he only appeared in a total of 10 games. He was a true starter in 2, but he only appeared in 10 games only for the Titans this past year. He was targeted 48 times, 31 receptions, 454 yards. He averaged 14 yards per reception and 1 touchdown. He would be a good addition no matter what, but this is not the old Julio Jones. Julio Jones isn't going to come in and give you that true right away number 1 option. Like, I think he has a lot of face value, he has name value, but this is not the Julio Jones you love, that is going to be a difference maker
Yeah.
for you.
He'd
I
be our
think
number
again,
one, but he's not really a number one anymore, quote unquote, per se. Like he'd be
honestly,
our number one, but I'm not sure he is a number one anymore.
honestly, it wouldn't surprise me even if Julio Jones came. It wouldn't surprise me to see like Kendrick Bourne lead the Patriots in receiving yards
Oh,
next season, even if
yeah.
Julio Jones came. That would not surprise me.
No,
So
I think he's excellent. I really like Kendrick Bourne next year.
yeah, so look, I wouldn't mind a workout. Bring him in, see what he has,
Yeah.
sign him to a low contract. I wouldn't mind that. Bring him in the offseason. But what I would like to see if they do sign him, be able to cut him before the start of the season if it doesn't work out without any dead money. That
Yeah.
to me, I would be okay with signing him. But if you're telling me you're signing him and then you have dead money if you end up cutting him before the start of the season because things didn't work out, then I don't like it. But that's kind of my thoughts there.
That's a low risk, high
Um,
reward move that you can't really hang your hat on. You kind of gotta hope a gamble pays off with that.
Yeah, I mean Julio Jones really is a gamble. I mean that's
Yeah.
exactly what he is right now. He's a gamble. Um, but I do kind of want to talk about the next trade up here that happened. The Patriots made a total of 2 trades so far, which in 2 days they're making some moves. I can't just necessarily say if it's exactly for the better, but you touched on the whole Mack Wilson, Chase Winovich thing a little bit. I touched on it in a whole video if you guys want to check that out. But do you want to touch upon that a little bit more in depth? Like, what was your reaction to this whole thing? Obviously, me personally, I didn't really know Mack Wilson up until this point, having to look into him. And I'll share my thoughts after you here. But Chase Winovich is officially gone. Would you
Yeah.
have preferred, like, this is my question for you. Would you have preferred to see Chase Winovich traded to somewhere like that would have given us a draft pick in return? Or are you okay? Like, do you like the fact that we went Chase Winovich for Mack Wilson player for player?
No, I like the player for player because I think we got, like I said before, I think we got a player. We got a player who's going to play for a player who wasn't playing. I think Mack Wilson's a starter next year in all likelihood at linebacker. I mean, who else you got? I mean, nobody just re-signed Schwan Bentley yet, right? I mean, Dante Hightower's still unsigned. You've got Raekwon McMillan, Harvey Longy, the kid out of
Corey Littleton's a free agent.
True. Yeah, I mean, as of right now, it looks like he's going to be a starter, and he's been a starter for Cleveland. I don't know too much about him. I haven't had a chance to study him too much yet, but there's got to be something there. Like I said, I trust Bill's judgment in linebackers above all else. I mean, I think if there's anything that he does know, it's the linebacker position, coaching it for all those years. So, I'm cool with it. I really like it, especially when you can get a player that's, a starting caliber player for a guy that can't even crack your top, really 2 or 3. The writing was on the wall with Chase, I think, for a long time. This move was, long overdue. I like it. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think you got an inside tackler, a younger guy that can possibly run a lot better than what we've had lately. So yeah, I'm cool with it. I really like it.
Yeah. Like I said before, I didn't really exactly know Mack Wilson too much. I was a little familiar with him because he was taken in the same draft that Chase Winovich was. He was just taken 2 rounds later. 2 rounds later. Mack Wilson, 5th round pick. Chase Winovich, 3rd round pick. You hate to see him go from a personality perspective. I was a big Chase Winovich fan. I really, really hope that he worked out here. I just love the personality on and off the field. I know that really clashed with Belichick, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, things didn't work out. I do still think like Chase Winovich is going to be a very, very good player in the league within the right system. This is not the type of thing where he's just a bad player and he's not going to pan out. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out for the Patriots. Don't be
Depends on where
surprised
you
if
are.
he goes.
Like you said, man. I mean, sometimes it's just a change of scenery. You're just not working with the right team. Get with the right team, it starts working. Just that sort of thing.
Yeah, don't be surprised if he like goes to the Browns and he's putting up an 8 to 10 sack season. That wouldn't
15
surprise me
sacks,
at all.
defensive
Yeah,
player of the year.
that wouldn't surprise me at
Oh,
all. It just didn't work out for the
uh,
Patriots. That specific scheme here in New England and what
yeah,
Belichick likes to do, because Belichick likes versatile players. If you're going to be an edge setter, you're going to be on the defensive line. You can't be a one-dimensional player, especially if you're an edge defender. If you're an edge defender, Belichick will not mess with a one-dimensional player. You have to be a
no.
multi-dimensional player as an edge defender. You have to be able to stop the run,
If you
hold
don't
the
stop the
edge,
run, you're out of a
and
job
pass
with him.
rush the passer. And essentially, that's what Chase Winovich wasn't able to do. He was a great pass rusher, but he could not set the edge. He let quarterbacks scramble off the edge. If it came to any type of run play, Winovich was not able to hold his own. But they're in
Yeah.
Cleveland. They're not as strict about that as Belichick is here in New England. They are a very pass rush heavy defense. So I do think that he will succeed there. Now, the thing with Winovich versus Mack Wilson, these are two very, very different players. Like Chase
Yeah.
Winovich, they're both linebackers, but Chase Winovich is one of those linebackers that is really more of an edge defender. He's going to set the edge. He's going to be off the ball linebacker, as were Mack Wilson. Mack Wilson is a coverage linebacker. That's what
Yep.
the Patriots are getting here. They're getting a fast guy, sideline to sideline speed. He's pretty good at stopping the run, too. I think that's a little bit of a category he's more
Yeah.
underrated in. But
Good overall
mainly what you're
player. I
getting
think
is
he's
a
good at
coverage
a
guy.
little bit of everything, not really great at too many things. I mean, I think he's a solid overall player. And like you said, got good speed, adds speed to that linebacker core. I think that's critical.
Yeah, the Patriots are getting something here with Mack Wilson that they don't have. Now, maybe you can get a little bit of that in Raekwon McMillan. We saw a little bit of him in coverage, and he did good for the most part. But like, we really don't know what we're getting from Raekwon McMillan at this
Yeah.
point. We still have to see. But with Mack Wilson, you're getting a guy that is a coverage linebacker, and that's something Belichick doesn't do. Belichick picks up linebackers like your Kyle Van Noys, like your Hightowers, your Bentleys, these big pounding, thumping linebackers that will come down,
Yeah.
stop the run, set the edge from time to time. And that's just not what Mack Wilson is going to do. Mack Wilson, his size actually compares a lot more to Kyle Duggar than it
Yeah.
does Dante Hightower, Jawan Bentley.
But that's the
So
league now, man. That's where
yeah,
that's the direction that it goes. I like Bill. I've been kind of hard on Bill like lately. It's like he's kind of. I keep saying like you're stuck at the Giants on the '90s, man. It's like LT and all these guys that just stand in a phone booth. Like it's not like that anymore. You got to be able to run. Like, you got to be able to drop into coverage. Like I said, these guys are essentially oversized safeties at this point. They're not just defensive linemen that are a little bit small. It's safeties that are a little bit too big. I mean, you got to be an athlete now at linebacker.
yeah, and I've been clamoring for Belichick to pick up a coverage linebacker for a very long time. If you guys have been subscribed to the channel, you've heard my videos, you've heard my live streams, you follow me on Instagram, Twitter. I have talked about this for a long time. Why doesn't Belichick not go out and get a coverage linebacker? Because he gets these thumping guys, he gets his Hightowers, he gets his Bentleys. And when those guys have to be put in coverage in certain situations, if you're an offensive coordinator, you are trying to get those guys in coverage because you know that you're going to burn them easily because they're not coverage linebackers.
Do you
Both the Patriots.
do you remember the game last year, Dallas? Do you remember Jawan Bentley trying to cover Ezekiel Elliott? And Ezekiel Elliott's not even what he used to be.
No,
I mean,
no.
he was just getting torched
Yeah,
on.
imagine him on
impossible
Alvin
routes out of the
Kamara.
backfield.
Yeah, exactly. I do remember that. I mean, we've seen several times. I can remember Dante Hightower going up against Kareem Hunt a few years ago. I think it was 2017. How just absolutely horrific that was. So essentially, what the Patriots are getting here is the guy who can officially at the linebacker position play in coverage, can take running backs out of the backfield, but not just running backs. If you look at his highlights, you look at his film, he's taken tight ends also, not just running backs. So what this essentially does for the Patriots is that you see guys all the time, Kyle Duggar, Adrian Phillips, they're coming from safety, from the secondary, they're coming closer to the line of scrimmage. They're playing hybrid linebacker essentially rather than safeties because they need guys who are able to cover within the middle of the field. They're the short to intermediate route, and they don't have linebackers who can do that. So now you're using your safeties. What he'll be able to do, in this case, Mack Wilson, maybe now you have Adrian Phillips or Kyle Duggar, maybe even both of those guys depending on what the Patriots do the rest of the offseason, who are now able to play more in the secondary. They're able to play more safety, potential cornerback, and play in actual coverage for the secondary rather than having to come up and play hybrid linebacker.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, they mix the packages, they mix the coverage here and there, but yeah, I mean, you'd like the guys to be able to play their natural positions. Definitely, if you can get a little more normalized with what the league is doing right now, where it's gone, where it's evolved to, I think that's great.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I do want to talk about Ted Karras. I don't know how much you know about the whole Ted Karras situation.
I heard they lowballed him. I didn't see too much about it. I just heard they lowballed him, which that didn't surprise me. I was like, yeah, that's typical. That's typical.
Yeah, so I definitely do want to talk about that. But Antoine Perkins, buddy, $10 donation, another big time donator of the channel. So much love, appreciate you. You said, I'm tired of the Patriots getting the scraps, or I think you meant scraps. You said scraps.
Yeah, I think it's scraps. Yeah,
and leftovers of the league for cheap. Learn to develop players and keep them. Know when to spend big and when it's your best interest. This is BS. I know a lot of Patriots fans are just absolutely peed off right now. Rightfully so. I will say again, like, let's not dictate the season based off of what's happening right now. There's so like the offseason really just started 2 days ago. Really a day ago, if you want to be honest with yourself. Like, there's still a lot to happen, but I completely understand why Patriots fans are upset. I'm upset. But I think the Patriots spending spree from last year has absolutely come back to bite them in the butt. And last year, when all this was happening, I did not expect a year later to say that the money we had, the ability we had to make a difference on this team was going to come back and bite us in the butt instead of really helping us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, last year it's oh my God, Hunter Henry, Johnny Smith, Judah, oh my God, it's like Christmas, and then now it's like we're just sitting here out in the cold, like, well, what the hell are we gonna do? Buffalo just got a lot better, and they were already a better team than us, quite frankly, if we're being honest. They just got a lot better on defense with Von Miller.
They signed OJ Howard too.
That's
him and Knox together.
He's been an underrated player that I've liked for a while now. I think he's been a decent tight end, but yeah. I mean, I trust that he has a plan. I mean, Bill always has. I'm not gonna go against him after all these years, but we'd like to see a little bit better returns on what we've been getting lately. It's got to hit this draft out of the park. If you're not going to do anything in free agency, you better have a great draft. It's got to be good this year.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're not even talking about having a draft like last year. We're talking about having a better draft than they did last year, which those are really, really, really high standards to be able to say, especially for a team that hasn't drafted.
You can't expect immediate returns all the time right away. Like maybe on your first round pick, you expect him to play right away, but I mean, a lot of the time you're developing those guys 2-3 years to become a starter.
Yep.
If you want to win right now, that's not really conducive to what you're trying to do. As far as like the scraps thing, I mean, I agree to a point. I mean, I think it's good to find value signings if you can get like if there's still like a lot of tread on the tire and you get a guy for cheap and get some good, good play out of him. I think that's really good. But that's pretty much when you are already a set roster and you're just adding in some finishing touches. Like if you have a lot of holes, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you've got the quarterback, you've got the defense, you've got everything. Now you're just kind of signing these guys that are just kind of more, wants than needs. That's when you're really in the driver's seat. But now, yeah, you got to be able to have a core group of guys on your, 10 to 15 to 20 guys on your roster that are rock solid that you can count on. Then the rest of them kind of your backups, your special teams after that. But I mean, how many great players do the Patriots have on their roster right now? Not enough.
No, I completely agree. And, last year we were talking about the same thing, and I know we discussed this a little bit too last year, was that some of these contracts that they were signing, you're like, wow, okay. I mean, that's a little much. I mean, we can talk about Jonnu Smith. I think we can all kind of agree that contract was a little bit much for a guy that was never truly.
Well, he didn't play up to it. I mean, the kind of player that he was coming, he didn't live up to the contract. I mean, I think if he had replicated his production, I'd be more okay with it. But I mean, if you're just gonna use single tight end most of the time, why the hell did you go out and spend so much money on two tight ends? I mean, trade Jonnu. I mean, I wouldn't trade Hunter. I think he's been probably one of our best offensive players last year. I think that was a home run signing. But yeah, Jonnu did not, for whatever reason, just didn't get going last year. I mean, hopefully that was just a 1 year thing. He gets going this year. But Yeah, man. I mean, a lot of money spent last year. It means you're not going to have a lot this year. And, a lot of people, I don't get the ripping on Bill. Oh, what the hell is Bill doing? I mean, look, when Bill's had the money, he spent it. I mean, and now, and everybody was, happy last year. Now, oh, man, what the fuck? I mean, I don't know, man. I think it's easy to do that year to year. We knew this was coming. We knew we weren't going to have like a major offseason 2 years in a row. The league just doesn't work that way. Salary cap doesn't work that way. It's not set up that way. So, I mean, I think this was kind of to be expected. I mean, if we were expecting another, Christmas morning this year, I think you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. I mean, you got to be able to, make some supplemental signings and things like that, but it's just not going to be one of those kind of off seasons.
Yeah. And what I will say too is with this whole Johnny situation, Johnny wasn't the only one that kind of got a contract that I was kind of about at the time. Now, even if he put up the production he did his final year in Tennessee, I still would have said, okay, that contract's still a little bit big. But again, like you said, that would diminish the way the contract looks right now.
It wouldn't be nearly as bad.
How we played. Yeah, it wouldn't be nearly as bad essentially. But Nelson Aguilar is another guy that we all talked about when the Patriots signed him. Dear God, you're signing him to a big contract. Now, year one, because the Patriots, I believe they front load contracts and then back load the end of the contracts. It didn't seem bad last year. Nelson Aguilar's cap number for last year really wasn't bad, but his cap number for this year, his final year, it's large. It's a big number, especially for what you're getting out of him. And that comes down to the Patriots gave him a big deal that was he really worth, And a team that I kind of see doing the same thing is the Jacksonville Jags right now, who just went and signed the Cardinals wide receiver to a massive deal. Massive deal that he is not worth. Christian Kirk, signed him to a massive deal that he's just not worth. Making what, like $20 million a year, something like that?
That's insane. He's not that kind of
player. They're going, and he could put up 900 yards. He's still not worth $20 million if he's only putting up 900 yards.
That's a bigger guy. He's a solid deep threat, but he's not. That's like Amari Cooper, elite receiver level money. That's insanity. $20 million a year. I mean, good for him though. I'm glad he got it. That's sometimes, the benefit of who else is in the free agent class with you. If you're the best receiver in a class and you're not necessarily an elite guy, you're still going to get top dollar because you're the top guy, even though you might be in a relatively weaker free agent class versus, next year, the year before, whatever the case may be. But yeah, I mean, to just ridiculously spend like that. I know the NFL makes you spend a certain amount of your cap space each year, but still, I mean, you got to be a little smarter than that. I mean, that's just way, way overspending.
Yeah, and I do wish that Belichick kind of looked a little bit more into perspective last year. Don't get me wrong. I had an absolute blast. Like, I don't know if I've ever had so much fun in an offseason as I did last year, and that was great. But, I mean, looking into the following year, knowing where you kind of were going to be with cap space, like Belichick usually looks into the following years, and I feel like last year he looked at his need for the upcoming season, but didn't really look that much into the offseason. Right now, that is absolutely biting us in the butt. But what I will say is that Belichick could have freed up much more cap space without having to release or cut players. And I know we already touched on Shaq Mason, but I think that's another thing that was upsetting Pats fans is that, okay, you cut him or you traded him mainly probably to free up cap space. You freed only up about $6 million, but you could have kept Shaq Mason and still freed up $6 million without releasing or cutting any players. You could have traded Nelson Aguilar. And who cares what you're getting back for Aguilar, whether it's a 7th, 6th, 5th, nobody cares as long as you're kind of getting that money back.
He's not nearly as important to the offense as Shaq Mason is, not by a long shot.
And you could have gotten rid of Aguilar and still kept Shaq Mason and freed up that money. You could have kept Mason and Aguilar, extended guys like Hunter Henry, Devon Godchow, messed around with Matt Judon's contract and still freed up more than $6 million. And look, you're still keeping all of these players. That to me is the most annoying thing, is that you see so many teams. You see teams like the Packers. You see teams like the Rams who are in negative cap space, who are still making more moves, more significant moves than the Patriots because they're able to manipulate cap. But instead of manipulating the cap, Belichick says, oh, we're at $5 million this year. All right, let's try to get to $15 million. Hopefully next year we'll have more. Like, you can't be within that mindset. Like, cap space, I don't want to say cap space is crap, but it is definitely maneuverable. you can
Oh,
work
yeah.
around the cap
Yeah.
easily, and
They
several teams are
restructure all the
doing so.
time. They do belt tightening all the time. There's always a way to free up some money here and there. I mean, it's
And the
to a
most
certain
successful
point. I mean,
teams.
it's not like you're going to be able to free up like 35 mil, but I mean, 10, 15, yeah, you can make some room if you really want to.
Easily too. Easily can free up 10 to 15 million. And you see the most successful teams doing it right now. Like it just
That's what Buffalo did to get Von Miller. They had to do some reworking on some things like that. They couldn't initially afford a player like that, I don't think. That's at least what I heard. It took some, finessing to get that done.
and again, it doesn't mean you have to get rid of players in order to free up money. It's extensions, it's
Yeah.
restructures, it's stuff like that. I mean, there's even players that probably aren't worth their money that at the very least, you can approach them and say, look, can we restructure your contract? Are you willing to take a pay cut?
Yep.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
No.
At least ask.
No.
Extend players. There's so many different things we can do, and we haven't done it. And Belichick's first thought was, hey, let's trade our most important, one of our most important players, period. Not to mention the most important player on the offensive line.
And they may not be done with some some house cleaning type thing. They might still
Oh, I'm
cut
sure they're not.
Nelson
I'm
Agholor.
sure they're
They
not.
might still be in the works for trying to free up some space. Because I mean, you think about it, we're sitting at like what 13 right now, about 13 million.
Yeah.
You got to figure. I mean, your draft class that's going to be about 8 million, 7 to 8 million right there. So now you're left with what 5 or 6, and you still have Trent Brown out there. That's pretty tight. I mean, I don't see how you're going to be able to do really anything else unless you do some more creative salary cap maneuvering, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the Patriots are not done. The Patriots still have to free up moves. Like you said, they have the draft class, but you don't have a guard, you don't have a tackle. If they're done at cornerback, this defense is going to really struggle next season. You still have to make some moves at linebacker. There's still a lot of moves this team has to make outside of your draft class. They're still going to be making in-house moves to be able to free up some cap space. We're not done, guys. This is just getting started. Again, it's been 2 days. It's been 2 days. If you think this team is done, you got another thing coming. There's a lot more to still happen. I'm sure there's going to be some heartbreak still. And then I'm sure there's going to be some moments where we go, okay, you know what? Belichick had something planned this whole time. So let's not get too upset just yet. But I do want to touch on make sure we didn't get any other donations here real quick. Oh, we did get a donation. So let me get to that real quick. But after this, I do want to touch on Ted Karras. I do want to touch on that whole Ted Karras situation. But $5 donation here from Alexander. Bro, I appreciate you. I see you all the time on IG. I see you all the time in the comments. Much love. Really appreciate you for all your love. You said the Patriots are projected to have 104 million next offseason and 184 in 2024. I looked on overthecap.com, so hopefully Bill does his thing then. I don't know how to me cap space is always so confusing. Like I'll see like fan pages on Instagram that follow the entirety.
Nobody really knows, man. I mean, you can do ballpark, but I don't think anybody really knows.
It's always tough. Like those numbers to find the exact numbers are always really so tough. I mean, I remember the Patriots were expected to have 90 to 100 million last offseason, and we didn't have 90 to 100 mil last offseason. So
no, and I'm not saying that Alexander is incorrect or anything like that, but I mean 104 and then 184 the next. That's incredibly generous. I think. I don't think it'll be nearly that. We might have a lot of room. It's not going to be that much room. I would be shocked if we had that much room. I don't think that's even possible. I mean, you think about all the guys you're going to have on your roster in a contract to have that much money. You'd have 15 guys on your roster. I mean, that's just not. What's the cap? 240? The entire salary cap, I believe it's like 230, 240 right now. I know it went down with COVID. Last year that kind of had an impact on it, but I think generally it's running in the low to mid twos, 200 million range. But yeah, man, I mean to have that, I don't think it's gonna be that much. Might have a lot, but it's not gonna be that much.
I will say that last offseason we were hearing rumors that within the next couple of years the cap number was supposed to go up significantly because they had some type of deal going on.
Yeah, they could have new TV money, things like that. That could happen.
Some network. So I will say the cap number, not just for the Patriots, like league-wide, the cap number was supposed to go up within the next couple of years because of some deal they had with different networks or something like that. So I could see where the Patriots could have some decent money. I'll have to look at the free agents also that they have coming up within the next couple of seasons because I mean, if you're talking about having that much money, you're having probably your
That means you
biggest
don't have a lot of guys under contract.
Yeah, you probably have your biggest cap casualties becoming free agents essentially within those years. So I will have to look at that. But look, if the Patriots do have that much money, it if the Patriots have that much money, it could make sense on why Belichick maybe isn't doing that much because he says, okay, next year, maybe the year after, we'll have a lot more money to be able to come back. But again, Mac Jones is kind of on like that rookie deal. You have like a 4 or 5 year window. Take advantage of that before you have to give him a
Now's the
boatload
time.
of
Yeah,
money.
now's the time where you want to be able to make signings because once you have to re-sign him to that second deal, now it's big money for the quarterback. Once you have him on that rookie deal, that's when you want to be able to bring in some guys from the outside and spend some big money on some other positions. Once you have to re-sign your quarterback, then it's a little bit different of a ball game.
Yeah, and even if the Patriots have this much money over the next couple of seasons, why not part a little bit of that money from the next season or two? And I'm not saying you need to take 50 million from next season and then 20 million from the next. Like,
Yeah.
just dab a little bit into your savings for the next couple of years and bring some of that into here right now because you don't want to do all of the moves you did last year and then skyrocket down this year. And then
Yeah, you don't have
next
to, just
year
because you
have to
have it, you
build
don't have
back
to
up.
spend it.
Yeah, like you don't want to go, down in 2020, up in 2021 after your
Yeah.
offseason, down in
Gotta be a little more
2022 because of it, and then next
consistent.
offseason back up. Like you
Yeah.
want to try to build some consistency, even if that means taking some money from the next couple
I will
of
say,
years.
I know they make you spend a certain percentage. I know you can't just bank like your entire cap, and they like literally require you to spend some money. But yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. Like, kind of smooth it over the years. Don't be on this like yo-yo we saw last year, then this right now, and potentially next year. You don't really like to see it like that. You'd like to see it a little more even, definitely.
Exactly. So big shout out to you, Alexander. I do want to look into those numbers now because I am really curious. So I will say, Over the Cap is a highly reliable source. Over the Cap, if you're trying to look at sports contracts, NFL contracts, the best website is Over the Cap. They are the absolute best. I use Over the Cap all the time. They're the most accurate, closest to the actual numbers. So if it's coming from Over the Cap, there is something to say about it. But again, those numbers are definitely going to fluctuate. Now, we do have a couple more donations before we talk about the whole Ted Karras situation. S27 with the $2 donation says, what positions do we take in the draft? I feel like first round.
Name it.
It's probably going. Yeah, first round's either going to be offensive line, wide receiver, or cornerback. That's my guess right now. But
Yeah.
the Patriots have so many needs, they'll probably trade out of the first round.
Yeah, that would be so typical. That would be so classic Bill right there. You think you're gonna get a great player, just pull the rug out from under you. Nope, see you tomorrow night. Like make you wait up till 11:30 just for absolutely nothing. I remember one year, I forgot what year it was. They were in a position to draft, and I wanted them to draft Xavier Rhodes. He went to Minnesota. We were in position to do it, and then we traded out the very next pick. He went to Minnesota. I was so mad. I was like, I just stayed up all night for this. Like, wow. But yeah, I mean, first round pick, I would say, I mean, it depends on the board, really. I personally wouldn't go O-line in the first round. I think that's, like I said, I think that's a position you can get kind of later on.
Yeah.
Get good value out of that. I'd go more either, if you get a guy, a receiver like maybe a Drake London, if he's still there at that time. I don't know if he will be. I'm not a big John Mechie guy, honestly. I think he's more of a second round guy. Jamison Williams, even coming off that knee, I'm not too high on him. I like Garrett Wilson. I think he's a really, really solid prospect. Corner AJ Booth, if he's still there. Certain position, corner, wide receiver, even linebacker, Devin Lloyd, maybe a Devin Lloyd, something like that. Yeah, I would definitely either focus on the secondary, the linebacking core, or wide receiver.
Yeah, and I don't love like offensive line in the first. If they do draft offensive line, it's going to be an offensive tackle. That's just Belichick. Like that's not me saying I want it. That's something Belichick would do. Like let's be honest. So that don't
punter in the first round.
Yeah, don't be don't be surprised if you're starting to hear rumors about like an offensive lineman in the first. But ideally, what I would like to see them do is cornerback. Now, I don't want them to draft a cornerback just to say hey, we have a need at cornerback. Let's draft. I think in the draft, you should be drafting for talent and not necessarily need. I think for need, you should be looking towards free agency. You should be looking towards talent and who's going to make a valuable difference at any position, no
If
matter
you're
what that
drafting for
position is.
need, if you're drafting for need, you're playing a dangerous game because there's a good chance that that won't work out. Like you said, you draft best player available. You just make the best roster that you can. Then you go into free agency and you fill your holes that way. But like you said, it's about building an overall roster, at least in my opinion. You just take, like you said, assemble the most talent that you can, the best player that you possibly can. I mean, you're going to have certain needs that you're going to address. Like if you need a wide receiver, you take one. Quarterback, you take one. But yeah, man, I mean, it's, certainly some of it is, need related. But I think overall, you try to go just best player available. That's what I would do.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to guards, like the Patriots could get UDFAs, guys late in the draft. Like I'm not really
Yeah.
worried about that. But with the quarterback issues the Patriots have, I also don't love the depth like mid to late rounds at cornerback. I trust Bill when it comes to being able to pick up UDFAs and whatnot and kind of developing them.
That was just what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah,
Because I mean, think about it: JC undrafted, Jonathan Jones undrafted,
Malcolm Butler.
Butler undrafted. I mean, he's had success finding these guys. I'm not saying that that's necessarily bound to continue, but he has shown an ability to find kind of these diamonds in the rough. I don't think we necessarily have to take one high, but if we do, I don't think it would be a bad thing either. But yeah, I would trust him to find one late or even undrafted and make a player out of him.
What I would like to see the Patriots do, like I said, essentially is if there's a good enough corner there at first to take the corner in the first, and then kind of in the mid to late rounds or even UDFAs pick up more cornerbacks because the Patriots don't need just one corner. They need a lot of help at corner for several years. The Patriots made one addition this offseason so far at cornerback, and it was a 1-year deal. So that's just pushing this one more year down the road. Like, I don't want to see the Patriots just dip once at corner. I want to see them dip several times at cornerback.
I'm pretty sure your starters right now are Jonathan Jones and Miles Bryant. That's not good.
Yeah, and Mills. Mills is your number one corner right
Mills,
now.
Yep, Jalen Mills is still there. That's
Mills
right.
is your number one corner.
Yeah, Mills and Jones. I'm sorry.
If that doesn't scare you, with Mills being your number one corner, I just don't know what will.
I think Jones is better than him. I really do. I think Jonathan Jones is as good a nickel corner as there is in the league, but I wouldn't want him as my number one because then you don't have a lot of depth behind it. That's what that tells me.
I think Jonathan Jones is an excellent corner, but I don't think Jonathan Jones is a perimeter corner. I think he's a slot corner. He's one of the best slot corners in the NFL. But with his size, I don't know if he'd be a good perimeter cornerback.
True.
Did I just lag there? Did I lag there at all?
It might be me. I'm not sure.
Were you able to hear what I said?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. As long as you can hear what I said, that's all that matters. But yeah, that's why again, you have your slot corner, but I wouldn't put Jonathan Jones there on the perimeter.
Yeah, I think he's about what, 6'1"? I mean, that's not terribly tall on the outside when facing guys that are like 6'4", 6'3", 6'4". That's not ideal.
Jonathan Jones?
Yeah.
John Jones sits in like the 5 something. He's 5'10", something like that.
Taller. Oh, I thought he was taller.
He sits in like the 5s. That's why for me, I'd be super scared for putting him on the perimeter. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that'd be like putting Miles Bryant on the perimeter. You don't want to do that.
Not good.
But big shout out here to Die Hard Pats fan, a $20 donation, biggest donation of today's chat. So big shout out to you. Much love, Die Hard Pats fan. You said keep up the great work. Love your channel. Go Pats. Yes, sir. Go Pats. Got a lot of content continuing to come out at you, me and Patriots Football Breakdown. Going to be doing this a lot more often. Obviously, recapping the first 2 days, but there's going to be a lot more days to continue to recap. And we have mock drafts coming up, and then the draft, and then post-draft. Like, we have so much content coming up. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel right now. We're not done with the live stream, but just subscribe to the channel now so you get notified for all of the good stuff. Subscribe to the Patriots Football Breakdown so you guys are able to get to his content also. But I think that was the we have one more. It looks like one more dono. My boy Neil Ray, what is going on, buddy? $2 donation, really appreciate you. You said get Jones, get Casey, get the offensive line Collins, Lyle Collins from the Cowboys. That's a trade rumor going around there. An offensive tackle, Fuller, Littleton. There's some really good names still out there.
Yeah.
There's really good names. I wouldn't mind. I said this before. Casey Hayward I think that'd be a good addition to the corner room. With J.C.
Yep.
Jackson gone, that's a guy that can slip in. He's not going to solve your issues for several years down the road, but 1, maybe 2-year deal, that could be your number 1 corner next year.
Kyle Fuller, too. That's a starting caliber corner.
Kyle Fuller, another one. Yep. Littleton,
Corey
like we
Littleton,
mentioned earlier.
Lyle Collins. Yeah, I mean, he was in Dallas for a lot of years. Yeah, man. Yeah, some good names out. Like you said, a lot of, Bobby Wagner's still out there. I mean, I would love to see that one. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to be able to afford it, but man, that would be sweet. But yeah, I mean, there's still some work to be done. There's still some people to be had.
Yeah, definitely. So don't get too upset yet, guys. The big names are not off the board exactly. But I've been talking about this for God knows how long now. I do want to talk about Ted Karras. This kind of fits into, I want to say, the whole Shaq Mason thing just a little bit. The Patriots offered Ted Karras it was a multi-year contract. I think it was like 2-3-year contract. And it was worth, I believe, $15 million. He signed with the Bengals for what, like 18, something like that?
Yeah.
Somewhere around that number. The Patriots offered Ted Karras that number, but last minute, they pulled the rug out and they brought back that contract, gave him $3 million less. Don't know why. Wow. Don't know why. And this is coming from Evan Lazar. So this is a genuine report. The Patriots last minute pulled that offer away, took about $2-3 million less. So they offered him about a $12 to $13 million contract then.
Oh, well, I mean, you need that $3 million to sign a C- corner from Houston. I mean, don't forget now, you need to set aside some money for that. I mean, we got to have Terrence Mitchell.
And that's not necessarily
that's crucial.
It's not necessarily to say that Ted Karras still would have picked New England, but Ted Karras has always been a Patriots fan. He's been with this team for a long time.
Yeah.
I do think that the Patriots had a fighting chance to land him if they kept that offer up. I mean, you're going from
I don't normally hear about stuff like that. I mean, if you're going to offer a guy something, you don't normally cut it down at the last minute. That's not really a way to do business.
From 15 to 18 million, like that's not too much more. I think Ted Karras would have taken a bargain deal and stayed with the Patriots. But now when you're going 12 to 13, 12 to 13, not to mention the fact that last minute, instead of upping your price when you hear somebody else is interested, you lower your price. That'd be a stab in the back to me personally. I'd be like, okay, I guess I know what I'm worth. So I'm not surprised Ted Karras left. I'm not at all. But again, even if you knew, like if you thought Ted Karras was going to be your answer with trading Shaq Mason, you knew that you obviously missed out on Ted Karras. You could have pulled the carpet under that Shaq Mason trade, but the Patriots still didn't. I would have felt more comfortable if Ted Karras was still here. I would have felt more comfortable with Shaq Mason going. Would I have loved that? Would I have loved the idea? No, I would not.
At least you have one of your starters from last year.
Exactly. You have another starter back. If you bring back Ted Karras, okay, and you still trade Shaq Mason in this case, now you have Ted Karras, and you either have Ted Karras and Michael Onwenu as your guards, now you're looking for another right tackle, or you put Onwenu at right tackle, you put Ted Karras at left guard, and now you're just looking for a right guard, which shouldn't be too hard to find.
And you never know when Ted Karras is on the field, and that's a compliment because there's no holding calls and there's no sacks being given up. He played very solid last year. He played really, really well. 2-time Patriot, left, came back. That's a really weird situation. I don't know what went down to cause that, but yep, they're putting themselves in a bind. I mean, they've got to be able to replace possibly 3 starting offensive linemen now. So that's pretty weird. Pretty weird times here.
Not to mention the versatility he brings, not just at each guard position, but also at center. Like, I could not understand for the life of me what Belichick is doing with this offensive line. He's pulling out the contract from Ted Karras. Karras leaves. He's dealing away your best offensive lineman, Shaq Mason, after Ted Karras leaves for a 5th-round pick. I mean, it's confusing me because Belichick values the offensive line so much.
Yeah.
But you got to think that he has some type of deal coming up. Like there's got to be something.
Maybe we have Matt Light and Logan Mankins coming out of retirement. Who knows?
Let's get someone. I mean, let's get anybody out of retirement at this point. Let's just get anybody. Let's just contact everybody that ever played for this
I don't care
team.
if they're like 60 or not. AARP doesn't matter. Just come back. We need you.
Seriously. Epic Creation with a $10 donation. Much love to you. You said, let me scroll down a little bit. You said, hey guys, loving the content. Much love. We appreciate that. You said, what veterans on the roster do you think are going to step up this year, especially on the defensive side? You want to start?
Veterans that are going to step up. Good question. Well, I would definitely say that I know they like something about Raekwon McMillan because they signed him to a 1-year deal last year. He blows out his knee in camp, and they signed him to an extension to make sure they had him again this year. I think maybe that's a piece that they believe in as a really talented player coming out of, I believe, Ohio State. Really solid young pro. So I like that one possibly to have a lot of upside. Outside of that, hopefully Josh Uche can finally, really make his mark. We need.
They need to give him playing time. I think that's the problem. They're not giving him playing time. It was kind of like Winovich. They weren't giving him playing time. But maybe with Winovich gone and these other linebackers gone, maybe.
Yeah, because Van Noy was getting that spot because he was setting the edge in the run game, whereas Uche is probably a better pass rusher. But now you don't really have a choice, man. You don't really have many people behind him. You'd like to see him be able to get something going, a little pass rush opposite Matt Judon. I would say probably the biggest ones would be Josh Uche, Raekwon McMillan. Thinking about the secondary, we don't really have a ton of vets in the secondary aside from Devin McCourty. We know he's going to show up. Adrian Phillips, we know he's going to show up. Duggar's been playing really well, getting better. Mills needs to be a little more consistent, although I know the hamstring had a little bit to do with that last year, so I can't really blame him too much for that. But yeah, pretty much those two linebackers, I'd say. D-line, I think we're pretty solid. I think we're pretty good there. Devon Godshaw, I thought he played well. Guy played well as always. So solid Lawrence Guy is. But yeah, probably those two. I would say, McMillan, Uche, I'd like to see a lot out of them next year.
Yeah. I mean, this seems probably like a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I feel like Devin McCourty is going to play a more pivotal role than I think a lot of people realize. And he's going to play a pivotal role on the field, but even off the field, I think he's going to play the even more important role. There's going to be so many questions around this team. There's going to be people questioning, as in the players, probably even some coaches, about where this team's headed, kind of some concerns about this team. And when that happens, you're really relying on your veterans. Who knows if Dante Hightower is coming back or not? He's been a leader. I don't love him as a player, but he's a great leader at this point. But you have guys like Matthew Slater and Devin McCourty retiring, and they're going to keep this team in check. They're going to keep this team motivated. And
I see people all the time like, why the hell are we re-signing Matthew Slater? I'm like, dude, do you realize like how great of a leader that man is, how important the locker room he is? Like, yeah, he's a special teamer, but mind you, he's also probably the best gunner of all time. By the way, he's one of the best special teamers to ever play the game. Elite leader, elite locker room presence. Those are the kind of guys you need. You need Matthew Slaters. You got to have guys like that.
Yeah, I don't think people necessarily realize the mental aspect of football. They really look at the physical side, but football is just as much mental as it is physical.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're down in the dumps, you think you suck, you think you're not going anywhere, that's going to reflect on your performance. But if you're motivated, if you're playing kind of the underdogs mentality, and there's people to hype up that mentality, that's going to also showcase out on the field, no matter what you're looking like or not. As in whether that's JC Jackson playing on the field or whether that's Justin Bethel playing on the field. If you have that mental motivation and you're being kept in check mentally, it could play a big role. So I think, Devin McCourty and, Matt Slater, they're going to be more important than ever.
Especially in this transition period, because we don't have a lot of guys that we know are going to be great locker room leaders. Like you would expect Mac Jones to be that kind of guy. But I mean, you don't really know who that next group of guys is going to be. So we need some of those old school, old guard guys to kind of help hand off the torch to this new crew.
Yeah. And another name I want to kind of say defensively here, because I know you kind of wanted some defensive names. I think Matthew Judon is going to step up really big from a leadership perspective. I mean, we're already seeing this offseason. If you're on social media, like no one's really recruiting on this team.
For anybody that comes to New England.
Yep, except for Matt Judon. You don't really see Patriots players recruiting, but Matt Judon from the start has been going absolutely berserk on Twitter trying to recruit players. I mean, Chandler Jones, DJ Chark, he's tried to recruit so many damn players to this team. I think you can kind of see that.
I would have loved to see Chandler Jones back. He went to damn Vegas, man. That sucks.
Yeah, I think you can kind of see the leadership perspective a little bit already from Matt Judon, and I think he's going to be a big part on the field, especially again with so many guys leaving. If
Yeah.
you have Dante Hightower leaving, like key pieces, if you have Bentley leaving, who's been another key piece leadership to this defense, I think Matt Judon will definitely step up big time. So those are some names for me to watch. Um, make sure we didn't get any more donations before I continue. Did I answer this one? Oh yeah, we answered that one. So I do want to talk a little bit about kind of some of the Patriots. Well, we've talked a little bit about like the Patriots re-signed. I guess we can kind of talk about that a little bit more in depth real quick. I do want to talk about the Patriots players that have left. I want to talk about Jakob Johnson leaving to the Raiders. I want to talk about Brandon Bolden leaving to the Raiders too,
Raiders,
JC Jackson, all of that. But kind of the re-signings here for the Patriots. They tender Jakobi Meyers. He's going to come back next year, essentially. I'd be surprised if he
Yeah.
didn't. I don't see a team
Nobody's going to give up
a
a second round pick for him.
Yeah, I don't see a team giving up a second round pick for Jakobi Meyers. But the team brings back James White, a multi-year contract worth $5 million. That is an absolute bargain deal for the Patriots.
That's huge for Mack Jones in particular. That's huge for him. That's a big win for Mack right there.
The first two games of the season, James White was targeted. He had 12 receptions. 12 receptions within the first two games.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely bizarre.
I think if he had played all year, Mack there would have been, there was probably no question already, but there might have been a little debate. There would have been no question he would have been the best rookie quarterback if he had James White to depend on. Like that is a critical piece, especially for a young quarterback. You need that safety blanket, like they always say, a tight end, a back that's always there, always open. James is that guy. He's been that guy for so many years, so it's so great to have him back.
Yeah, and one of my question marks for this team, it wasn't really a positional need. Like, I'm not like, oh, the Patriots need to target running back this offseason, but an offensive need for this team was to figure out who your third down back was, who was your pass catching running back, because that guy was James White. Last year we were talking about who's going to be that guy, and they re-signed James White to a 1-year deal. So that is an area offensively that the Patriots did address this offseason, and they have it addressed for, at least 2 more years, it looks like, with James White signed under a 2-year contract. So that is a positive to look at, is that they did find that third down back. They found that receiving back, which the Patriots really, really utilized in this system and was utilizing a lot already in just the beginning of the season with Mack Jones. So I think that is a big, big, big addition. I'm super happy to see James White back. Now, James White also did have contract offers from the Raiders, but he said, hey, the Patriots wanted me back. That was enough for me. And he re-signs with the Patriots. So super stoked about that. Obviously the Patriots here, they re-signed Devin McCourty, as we already talked about, Jakobi Meyers, Matthew Slater. What do you think about Brian Hoyer?
It's smart. It's a smart, cheap signing to have that backup quarterback, that calming presence in the room for Mack to help learn with. He's really probably more of a coach really than a player at this point. He comes in to clean up, late in games when needed, take a couple kneel downs here and there. I think his kind of intellectual value is far more important than his, playing value right now. So I think, able to keep that guy in the building, just that voice and that mind to help him kind of understand the game and progress. I think that's huge. Plus getting paid $2 million to hold a clipboard. That's pretty damn good. Good for Brian Hoyer to get it. I think that's a really good signing. Obviously, Devin is huge. Bringing Devin McCourty back, we would have had real problems in the secondary if we didn't. Losing Jakob Johnson, losing Brandon Bolden, not too concerned about either of those. I think Bolden would have just gone back to special teams anyway. And Jakob Johnson, fullback's not something you're really worrying about re-signing. I mean, I think they've been waiting to slide Dalton Keene into that role last couple of years anyway. I think that's what we're going to see, that immediate. They're just going to plug him right in there to fullback, I believe. But yeah, I mean, and Jakob is a good fullback. I'm not saying that he can't play or anything, but it's another one of those kind of replaceable positions. Not too worried about those two losses, but the re-signings I think have definitely been important.
Yeah, the re-signings have been super important. And we already know the Patriots really like to take care of their guys first before anything else. I did tell you guys that what they did last year was uncharacteristically aggressive, as we all know, and that this team usually within the legal tampering period and the first day of free agency, they're really taking care of their players first, re-signing their players, bringing their guys back before looking elsewhere and signing other guys. Something else I do want to mention real quick is don't be surprised if the Patriots are making more roster moves in a few days when the whole comp pick situation is done, because within the first few days of free agency, the whole comp picks is essentially when it's hot in the NFL. So for lack of better words, what I'm trying to say is, you're hearing about comp picks. With JC Jackson, for instance, the Patriots will get a 3rd round comp pick, it looks like, in return, because he departed from the Patriots, signed a big contract with the Chargers in this case. The Patriots aren't getting the Patriots aren't getting any comp picks this year because of the players that they lost last year, because they went on such a big free agency splurge that it canceled out. And I think
it's
that's
an offset type of thing. If you sign a lot of guys, you're not necessarily going to get a lot of draft or compensatory picks back, even if you're losing guys. It's that bringing in versus going out kind of thing. It's like you said, that offset type of mentality. That's probably the reason we're not going to have many, if any.
Yeah, and that's why the Patriots, they're not going to have comp picks. It's already official. They're not going to have any comp picks for free agency last year, for any comp picks for this upcoming draft. And I think Belichick looks at that and he says, okay, well, if I sign any big guys right now, if you go out right now and you sign Allen Robinson to a massive deal, you're canceling out what you would get back for JC Jackson. So essentially, JC Jackson is now leaving for absolutely nothing. So I think what Belichick is kind of waiting for is he's waiting for that period where comp picks are included to die down, so that once you go out into free agency, you can sign whoever you want to whatever contracts you want without having to worry about comp picks being included. So that is something I want to say. I think Belichick will make more moves when comp picks are not included, and that will happen within a few days.
What kind of money do you think a guy like Allen Robinson's going to get, though? I mean, is that something we could even do?
Honestly, I think the Patriots, if they really wanted to, I definitely think that they could make that happen. Like I said, the cap is so maneuverable if they want to. Like, if they really want a guy, they're going to bring him here, and they already know the cap, the cap issues that are going to come with it. I also think it's kind of interesting. Allen Robinson hasn't signed anywhere yet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
might be waiting.
Interesting. One of the arguably the best,
possibly.
Arguably the best free agent wide receiver is still not signed. We've heard absolutely nothing. Maybe the Patriots are kind of talking to him behind the scenes, and they're like, "Hey, we want to sign you to this contract, but we don't want to sign right now because it's going to go against the comp picks. Once that goes away, we want to sign you to this big contract." So
how about this one too? Davante Adams, just thinking out loud here, saying he's not going to play on the franchise tag. Do you think about maybe putting together a big package for him? Maybe. I mean, that would be pretty sweet, wouldn't it?
I mean, that if you get Davante Adams here, I mean, I don't think you worry about your weapons anymore.
No,
I think you're pretty good in that case.
No. That's your number one wide receiver, folks. That now we can put that one to rest once and for all.
But nonetheless, I think the question comes up because he doesn't want to play under that franchise tag. It's not that, hey, I don't want to play in Green Bay.
They'll probably get something worked out long term. Just because they tag a guy, usually it's just a tactic to make sure he can't negotiate somewhere else. They'll probably get him a long term deal.
Yeah. So even if you do trade for him, you're either saying, hey, Packers, you need to sign him to an extension and then we'll trade for him, or you're trading for him with the expectation that you're now getting a contract extension done. But no matter where Davante Adams goes, he's not playing on that franchise tag. It's not about not wanting to be in Green Bay. It's about, hey, I am not playing on that franchise tag.
Yeah, I want the security.
Exactly. We have one more donation here. It looks like Lulu Pats for Life. $10 donation said, hey, guys, glad I made it home from work to join y'all. Yes, sir. We are glad to have you in here. Obviously, we're about an hour and 13 minutes in, so a lot missed, but you can, of course, rewind from the beginning. This video is staying up on the channel, so you can skip around, rewatch it if you missed any parts. But big shout out to you for joining us here. And thank you again for supporting with that $10 donation. But we kind of talked about the guys that re-signed. I do want to talk about a little bit about, some of the guys that departed. We already talked about Shaq Mason. We talked about Ted Karras. They also signed Nick Folk, which I really do like. I also like the fact that they signed him to a 2-year contract, which kind of gives some stability to kicker for the next couple of years, which we haven't had in a long time. So I am actually really happy about that. Let me see too. But As for the whole Jakob Johnson and Brandon Bolden thing, I said when Josh McDaniels became the head coach of the Raiders, right away I said
Are
Brandon
you going to
Bolden's
see
going
some
to go to the
players go
Raiders.
over there? He's going
I was
to
like, Brandon Bolden's going to the Raiders. It doesn't. It won't surprise me to see it. And Brandon Bolden is going to the Raiders because I think someone like Josh McDaniels, who's in a new system, a new franchise, kind of trying to build his own system offensively and defensively within that franchise, he needs some guys that he knows about already. And he's going to bigger contracts to those guys, also known as former Patriots. In this case, Brandon Bolden. The Patriots have Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson returning. They got their third down and slash receiving back in James White, which is essentially what Brandon Bolden played. Brandon Bolden really made up for that loss of James White. Brandon Bolden was the guy on screens. Brandon Bolden was the guy on third downs. Brandon Bolden was mainly a receiving back, but you don't really need him now because you just signed James White to a 2-year contract, which essentially means is that Brandon Bolden was going to revert back to a depth piece and a guy that mainly played on special teams. He must have known that too. At least now with the Raiders, you're probably actually going to get some starting time offensively. Jakob Johnson, on the other hand, I think that's more of a loss, I would say, than Brandon Bolden at this point. And I love Brandon Bolden. I would have loved to see Bolden stay around. But it doesn't surprise me that he left. As with Jakob Johnson, the Patriots can definitely get a better fullback than Jakob. I think he played great. He played like below 30% of the Patriots offensive snaps. Patriots are one of the only teams that actually still utilizes a fullback.
Yeah.
Whether it's the draft.
It's actually rare at this point. Very few teams, like you said, actually have a fullback on their roster.
And whether it's the draft or free agency, they can definitely find a fullback to replace Jakob Johnson. So I'm not concerned whether even they want to use Dalton Keene. You know, we'll just have to see about it. But obviously, they have guys that can easily replace Brandon Bolden, where this isn't really a loss versus, hey, we still kind of have questions on who's replacing Jakob Johnson. We're there at fullback for the Patriots. But what are your kind of thoughts here about Gunnar Olszewski? The Patriots decided not to place any type of tender on Gunnar Olszewski, which means he's now an unrestricted free agent, meaning that any team can sign Gunnar Olszewski without any implications.
Not really surprised. I mean, he was nice on some punt returns here and there, but I mean that was never really a guy that I thought you're worried about re-signing. Really, I knew he was kind of had a bit of a cult following. He was a bit of a fan favorite, so I'm sure in that standpoint, it's sad to see him go. But I mean, from a production standpoint, you're not really losing anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to rule out a return still of Gunnar Olszewski. I'm not sure exactly what those numbers would have been like on the tender. But depending on what those numbers would have looked like, maybe the Patriots went, hey, we're not going to give you like $2-3 million. We'll negotiate when you become a free agent or unrestricted free agent based off of what we're willing to give you and kind of meet you there. But again, won't be surprised to see the Raiders be interested. Won't be surprised to see other teams interested based off of specifically what he brings as a returner. He actually has the franchise record for punt return yards in 2020 here in New England. Yeah. So, I mean, if Gunnar Olszewski does leave, you're not losing too much as a receiver. I think he'll be utilized as a receiver more somewhere else, but you are losing a punt returner. And I feel like returners have been just such a big question mark for this team for the last couple of seasons. So, I mean, you hate that could be a potential question the Patriots still have to deal with. They haven't really found out who their kick returner is. If you lose Gunnar, now you're kind of trying to figure out who your punt returner is.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to do that? Yeah, that's a good question.
But I think we touched a lot on the Patriots. There's nothing me personally I have for like that's Patriots related. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about that's Patriots related. If you have any questions, anything they've done, anything moving forward that you kind of want to discuss on the Patriots side of things.
I think we pretty much hit it all to this point. I mean, now it's just kind of a wait and see approach. Hopefully make a few moves here in the next few days, or maybe in kind of the second part of free agency, maybe another trade or two, just something to be productive and try to improve the roster. I mean, to just sit still kind of sucks. It really sucks.
Yeah. I mean, you're watching your team kind of be depleted with your hands tied behind
everybody's
your back.
Getting better. Look at the AFC West. I mean, that's
dear
a pretty
God.
loaded division.
Dear God, that is a war zone in football.
You're going to see some of the best 9-7 teams you've ever seen in your life, because there's going to be 3 of them that just can't win all the games. It's just going to be by attrition. They're going to be like not 9-8 now, but it's crazy. I mean, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, Mahomes in the same division. Derek Carr's like all the way down at the bottom. He's actually a solid quarterback. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, we do have another donation here from Antoine Perkins. He said, with our luck, another team will take the second round tender on Myers, and the Patriots won't even be able to match a $9 million a year deal for him. Honestly,
I don't think so. I don't
like,
think they would.
if a team does do that, let's say a team does match the offer, would you match that? Would you rather take that second round pick, or would you match that $9 million offer?
I would. I think God, that's tough actually, because I think Jacoby's turned into a really nice player. That is a really good question. I think I would lean toward re-signing him, but that second round pick would be very tempting. I got to admit.
Yeah, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Patriots go and take that second round pick. I love Jakobi Meyers, and I do want to see him around this team for a lot longer. But I think one area that is very concerning, and the only area I would say really of his play that could have him on the outside looking in at some point, is he isn't a yards after the catch receiver. He doesn't pick up yak yards.
No.
He's like Hunter Henry in that sense, in the sense of he can really catch some tough balls, catch 50-50 balls, but unless you get him into space where he's just running
on third down over the middle with money. I mean, he would take a huge hit, still hold on. I mean, he was the best at that last year. Like you said, not really much of an after the catch guy, but man, he made tough catches, man.
Yeah, and he's not going to do much after the catch unless, like I said, you're getting him into space and he just has free yards to just run and do his thing. Outside of that, he's not going to give you anything after the catch. One other area of his play that I'm a little concerned at times is that getting out of his breaks, sometimes he's a little too slow because he tries to do a lot of different moves. And because of that, sometimes it takes him a little bit longer to get open. That's something that's easily just like teachable and just get it out of him type of a thing. But you can't really necessarily teach yards after catch. It's like you got it or you don't. So that's one area of his play that I can see the Patriots saying, well, we want someone that we can give a, 8-yard, 7-yard slant to, and they'll turn it into 15, 20 yards. And that's not going to be Jakobi. But I do think they like Jakobi. I do think Jakobi stays around. Like you said, that second round is very tempting. It wouldn't surprise me, though, in that case, if Belichick did take that second round, because he just says, hey, Jakobi has no yak yard ability. I'm not paying him $9-10 million. But again, that's just kind of
that money would be a lot. Yeah, that's
That's kind of just food for thought, though. I don't see that happening. So kind of lastly here, what I want to do, we really touched a lot on the Patriots, and like I said, we'll be going live more to discuss recaps on the rest of free agency and whatnot. But I think we recapped pretty well over what's happened the last couple of days. But I do, like I said, want to talk about just some of these other NFL moves, because it's nice to talk about what directly impacts the Patriots, and it's nice to talk about, hey, Patriots losing this guy, Patriots signing this guy, Patriots trading this guy, but other teams are making additions too, which also directly impacts the Patriots. In this case, I kind of want to talk about the Bills off first, and then we can talk about some other teams if you're interested. I do definitely want to talk about the Bills and the Chargers, both AFC teams for sure. Let's start off here with the Bills. Bills today making some good moves. They signed Von Miller to a 6-year deal. Can you believe this? 6-year deal. $120 million, something like that.
You must be on that avocado ice cream too, I guess. I don't know,
dude. Oh my god, I saw that, and first off, I was like, "Yo, are you kidding me?" Because we just traded Shaq Mason. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
He's 33, right? Not 23. That's like a 23-year-old contract you give it, not to a 33-year-old. They must know there's a lot of juice left on the in the tank there. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, he's 32 right now. I'm not sure when his birthday is, so I'm not sure when he turns 33. It could be before the start of the season. But if he plays out that contract, he'll be 38.
Oh, no way. No way.
He'll be 38. That's why when I saw that, I was like, there is just no way.
Yeah, that's one of those things. It's like, okay, he's not going to be there. These baseball contracts, 10 years. He's not going to be there 10 years. Give me a break, man.
And it's like, you still have to give him that money, right? That's why you have to be cautious about it. Because even if he retires, that contract doesn't just go out the door. You still got to pay him the money.
mean, I guess it really just depends on the guaranteed money. I mean, the rest of it's just kind of window dressing to a point, man. And they can find a way where, and they can get to a point where it gets to like, okay, well, we'll eat this amount, but we don't want to eat too much. After maybe like 3 years, they just finally give up on it. But yeah, I mean, not a chance he lasts all 6 years. That would be like superhuman. That would be ridiculous.
Can you believe on average? So obviously this isn't actually what he's going to be making per year because uh, contracts don't work on average. Like, oh, hey, let's divide it and this is how much you're going to be making. It's very different. But AAV, the average that he'd be making is $20 million a year. Can you believe that? 32, 6-year contract, $20 million a year.
Crazy. I mean, it just shows the importance of, defending these quarterbacks now. Everything is about the quarterback. It's the only position on the field. Now we have to, all out assault on the quarterback position, crazy money for old pass rushers. It's really, really wild. I mean, I don't blame them. It's an arms race in the AFC right now. You look at the West, every team in that division, pretty crazy. I mean, you don't know who's going to win, who's going to be in last place. That's really, really wild out there. The North, I think that's a little more clear. That's pretty much Baltimore's division. Well, Baltimore and Cincinnati, I should say. The South, yeah, not too much coming out of there. Tennessee still, but yeah, and then just us and Buffalo in the East. I'm not too worried about the Jets. Obviously, the Dolphins a little bit. They swept us last year, so they do give us some problems. But yeah, I mean Buffalo. That's, good for them. I don't like it. Obviously, it makes them anything that makes them better. I don't like. But yeah, they got better today. Got to admit.
Yeah, and they didn't just get better defensively, they got better offensively. Obviously, they already have Knox, the tight end, who was just absolutely outstanding for them. He's given the Patriots some problems, even in the postseason this past year, putting up multiple touchdowns. But now they're a team that could use 2 tight end sets like the Patriots because now they have also signed O.J. Howard. So they also just signed yesterday a good receiving running back also.
Oh, yeah, J.D. McKissick, right?
Yep, they signed McKissick. So they are loading up. They are absolutely loading up. They're getting better. The Patriots right now are getting worse. Looks like, at least from right now's perspective, that the Patriots aren't going to be running up the AFC East. Yeah.
I guess we can go back and watch our 3 Games to Glory DVDs, I guess.
Yeah, we could just kind of watch those when they're beating us down.
Rewatch Super Bowl 51 a couple more times.
Yeah, make us feel a little bit better. But But yeah, so they're having an absolutely stellar offseason right now, and we'll have to see what they continue to do. Very surprised Von Miller went there. I thought Von Miller was either going to the Rams or the Broncos. I did not see the Bills pulling this off.
Yeah, they kind of came in at the last second from what the reports were saying. They kind of just swooped in there. Like Dallas was in on him too, trying to get him. But yeah, Buffalo just made a play, I guess, at the end. It got him.
Yeah. Now, as for the other AFC team, an AFC West team that definitely needed to make some moves if they wanted to keep up, the Chargers. And let me tell you, they did. The Chargers are a top 3 team in free agency for me so far this year. Signing J.C. Jackson to a massive contract. Him and Derwin James are going to be absolutely fantastic in the secondary, as long as Derwin James can stay healthy. That's a big if. I mean,
he's one of the best safeties in football, but he gets hurt a lot.
If Derwin James can stay healthy, him and J.C. Jackson are going to be absolutely lethal. But the problem with the Chargers was really that defensive line, their inability to stop the run being inconsistent. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack on that defensive line. They made some good moves defensively on the interior of the defensive line, and they're projected to draft Jordan Davis. Now, projections don't really matter, but if they sign Jordan Davis, that is one of the best defensive lines in the entire National Football League with a really good
That's where he could go and make an immediate impact. I mean, I think he's going to make – that's the kind of player that's going to make an immediate impact anywhere. I think he's a special player. I know we don't even necessarily need D-line. I think I might still take him if he was available there just because I think he's that special. But, yeah, if he were to go to the Chargers, that would be a perfect fit.
Yeah, it really would be. It really, especially with his pass rush ability. I mean, you have Khalil Mack on one end, Joey Bosa on the other end, and now you have Jordan Davis in the interior, and then you have J.C. Jackson and Derwin James in the back. Dear God, that is
the only thing they're missing is a nose tackle. I mean, that's really it.
This team's really looking like day and night. They re-signed Mike Williams, the wide receiver. I'm trying to think. I feel like they made other moves on this offense. They mostly made defensive moves. Like, especially on the defensive line. They had multiple defensive linemen But I feel like they made more moves than just Mike Williams, bringing him back. But nonetheless, their offense really wasn't an issue last year. Their offense was pretty damn
No.
good. It was really just the defense that was an issue, and they absolutely addressed that. So they're going to be a team to watch. Is there any other teams that are making like additions that you are just you're blown away with?
Additions. No, not. I think it's been pretty. I mean, I think the Russell Wilson trade was huge. I mean,
That was insane, dude. They got a bundle.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle got a massive haul back from them. They got 2 really good players, a boatload of draft picks. But
Who do you say wins that?
and
Who
then
do
I
you say
heard
wins
like
that trade?
well, right now, obviously Denver won it. In 5 years, I would say probably Seattle won it. They're going to have the assets by then that are going to eventually evolve into, if they hit those draft picks right, Seattle's going to win the trade in the long term. In the short term, it's clearly Denver. That team looks pretty good too right now. Although you think about it, to get Russell Wilson, you give all that up. So now it's like, how much really do you have to work with? Like, yeah, you got an elite quarterback, but how many? I mean, yeah, Jerry Jeudy, you got Cortland Sutton. Yeah, you got a couple of good receivers. Javonte Williams, nice running back. But I don't know. I think kind of you get into a situation where you got your roster a little bit too much for that. It's a lot of assets to give up. Yeah, short term, definitely probably Denver won that. Long term, I would say Seattle.
I completely agree. Right now, obviously, like Broncos are going to be the better team because of the trade. But I mean, the Seahawks get a defensive lineman, which they really needed. They get a tight end, which they really needed. They get 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. I mean,
now they just need a quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, they have Drew Lock, which I mean, maybe they can turn it around. I don't think so. I'm not a big Drew Lock guy. At least they got something in return there. But with 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, whether it's a draft or whether it's via trade, like they'll get a quarterback, and now you have other assets along with a good tight end and Noah Fant and Shelby Harris on the defensive line.
Seattle definitely draft a quarterback first round, probably.
See, if I'm Seattle, I'm not drafting a quarterback this year. This is a terrible draft class.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a good quarterback draft. Not nearly as good as last year, that's for sure.
Yeah, this one's absolutely terrible. I'm not taking a quarterback.
Who's the best prospect? Probably Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett. That doesn't really excite you too much.
Yeah, Malik Willis I'd probably go with. And can Seattle get to that pick? Like, you might have to trade up for him still, and I'm not willing to do that. He's not a guy you trade up for. So
get a bridge guy. Wait for another draft.
But I'm trying to think if there's any big moves, anything else that we're missing. Really, we touched upon everything with New England. I just looked. Nothing else that's breaking news wise. Yeah, nothing else. So is there anything else specifically you want to talk about before we hop off here?
Well, the best remaining free agents right now, Taron Armstead is ranked number 1. You got Allen Robinson in the discussion, Bobby Wagner still, Jadeveon Clowney, and then rounding out the top 5 is. So that's currently, as ranked by Pro Football Focus, the best 5 remaining in free agency. So we will see what happens when maybe we can bring up some cap space, go get one of those guys. Hopefully,
I will say the Patriots are favorites. I don't know why. And why is my phone shaking like that? I don't know. I think I'm getting a call, and it's just shaking.
Yeah, I think that's what. I was gonna say.
It looks kind of cool, so y'all are just gonna deal with that for a couple of seconds. Y'all got to deal with a couple of seconds here, but the Patriots are favorites to land Jadeveon Clowney. I don't know why they're favorites to land Jadeveon Clowney, but they're favorites to land Clowney if that means anything to. I mean, what do you think about Clowney to the Patriots?
Oh, that'd be solid. I would like that. No, I would really like that.
I think that he could be a good
one. He could sign opposite of Judon. I think that then you have a good bookend pass rush.
That's a good way to put that. I didn't even think about him next to Judon. That would be good. And he's not getting, I don't think, any big offers. So the Patriots might be able to get him for I'm not going to say like $5 million cheap.
Relatively cheap. I mean,
yeah, relatively cheap, I would say. But
guys,
that's going to be. I think there's several moves they have to make, but if you're trying to help compensate for the issues you're going to have with secondary, the best way to kind of combat that is going to be get to the quarterback, dear God, as fast as you possibly can. Like within a second. You better
be able to pass rush.
Yeah, if you can't cover, you have to pass rush. If you can't pass rush, you better be able to cover. So the Patriots got to at least do one of those next season.
Yeah.
But guys, I really appreciate everybody for watching. We had a really good live stream running on a little bit over an hour and a half. We are going to be back shortly to discuss the Patriots free agency. Like always, I have you guys covered for news, rumors, signings, trades, releases, everything on my channel. Already made a lot of videos, a lot of content lately. So make sure you guys check that out. Subscribe to me for all your New England Patriots news. Turn on that bell notification so you get notified every time I post a new video and you're not late. And subscribe to Patriots Football Breakdown for all of his New England Patriots content over again at Patriots Football Breakdown. But nonetheless, we appreciate you guys for watching and tuning in with us, especially everyone that tuned in for the entirety of the live stream. But nonetheless, like always, go Pat.